Hello, everybody, and welcome back. It is time for another wonderful episode of the Jack Wagon Sports Podcast on the Jack Wagon Network. A lot of exciting stuff to talk to you about this week. Personal life achievement. I am the first of these three jackasses to make, break 100. Just like all my test scores in high school, less than subpar. But we have a lot to talk about, from NASCAR drama, and our college football preview continues this week with the ACC. So lots and lots to talk about. We're just going to get right into it. We're going to throw it over to our main man, Slate Storm, who's finally back with us. He finally got his shit together, got his schedule figured out, and he's here to join us.
Yeah, so first off, congrats, George.
Oh, thanks, buddy. I really appreciate that. Since you didn't text me the other day.
Next time you have that happen, you probably video it. Probably get a lot of views on YouTube.
Yeah.
It'd be nice for us, but
he forgot the one in front of the 88 in 18 or whatever the hell he was at.
Yeah. I scored a 92. At least that's what the car world told me.
No, so we're already talking about it. So what happened is I got to 18, and the way I was keeping track of my scorecard, I can pull it up then.
No, we saw it. Yeah.
So, well, the viewers want to see it, but right. Anyway, so what happened is on every hole I'd write, okay, I got a 7. So on a par 4, I would write +3 below that, and then below that I'd be like, okay, so far I'm at like +6, whatever. Well, going into 18, I was like just keeping track of the back 9 up to then. So I added up. I was at +7. And so in my head, I just went, 36 + 7 is like whatever number that is. It's a lot of math playing Uno earlier, and it hurt. But so at that point, I was at 91, because like that's what I would have finished +7. Therefore, I would have shot a 91. Well, I didn't think about the fact I had to do the last hole. So if I would have parred, I would have scored a 91, but I got a bogey, so I got a 92. Either way, I'm very happy. I literally, Nick was the first person I called. I was driving the cart still. My fucking hand was shaking. I was like, Nick, I had to call somebody because nobody's going to believe this. I was like, I just broke 100. And he's like, oh. And I was like, the best part is I lost one ball. The one fucking ball I lost was complete bullshit too. So it happened on hole 10. I get down to the green, and I will also go ahead and say this. I took only 2 mulligans the entire day. I was very proud.
So in all reality, 94. But either way, broke 100.
Yeah. Either way, even if you count all my mulligans, I still broke 100.
Was it one on the front, one on the back? Or was it a rough morning start and you used 2 in the first 6 holes?
No. So the one was on the 4th hole, and this is how I knew like it was going to be a weird but good day. So I tee off. And I got the new driver 2 weeks ago. And so this is the first time I've actually played with it, not been to the driving range. And so I tee off and I skull the shit out of it. But it goes like 90 degrees to my right. It hits a tree and literally rolls back up the tee box to me. I was like,
oh my God.
Okay. So I tee it up and I hit it again. And
it teed it up.
Yeah.
From that tee box, the women's tee box.
Yeah.
I teed it up there.
So I hit it, but it starts slicing to the right. I'm like, fuck. It hits a tree, and I don't see it land. I don't see it drop anything. So I think it just hit a tree and went further into the woods. So I take a mulligan. I tee off again. I pulled out the other driver, and I top the shit out of it, but I can at least find it, and it goes up to the left. So I drive up to the ball, and there's another ball sitting there. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, this wasn't here. I pick it. It was the fucking first ball I hit that hit the fucking trees, and it just bounced all the way across the fucking fairway and landed. I was like, oh, okay. So I was like, I didn't lose a ball. I was happy because I only had 4 balls in my bag. I didn't realize how many balls I lost the last time I was out. And I was like,
that's ballsy.
My original plan was I'm going to play 9. I thought I had more than that. But I was like, I'm going to play 9. I get there, and the guy at the front desk is like, because I told him, I was like, I'm only going to pay for 9 now. But I was like, I might end up playing 18. I'll come back. And he goes, well, we're only charging for 9 right now, regardless, just because there's weather coming in. He's like, we don't want to issue rain checks. I was like, oh, fair enough. So I hit it. I was like, well, I don't need to buy balls in. I know I definitely have enough for 9. I got to the fucking first tee, open up my bag, and there's 4 balls in there. I went, oh, this is, well, I guess I'm playing until I run out of balls. But so, yeah, that was my first mulligan. And then the second mulligan, it was on 10. And I was coming up to the green, and I chipped, and I was like, I just had to hit it straight. I was like 30 yards off the green. I fucking shanked this bitch like 50 yards right. I went, what the fuck? But like there wasn't like any like areas that should have gotten lost in. Like there was a tree, but like I could see underneath the tree, and the next tee box is over there. So I was like, it's fine. So I dropped the ball and I chipped again, and I did the same fucking thing, but not quite as far to the right. So I go up and I find that ball. I was like, well, where's my other ball? And the thing just fucking disappeared. I was so pissed. I was like, this is the ball I lose. And at that point, I was like, okay, I'm gonna unravel now and completely fall apart. And somehow I shot bogey golf on the back nine. So,
damn.
But yeah, I don't know what was more impressive, breaking 100 or only losing one ball, because
I think going into it with 4 balls and thinking that was going to be okay is the largest accomplishment.
I know.
Yeah.
But so I learned 2 things. One, I guess just keep 4 balls in my golf bag at all time, and 2 is just play golf by myself from now on.
Yeah.
But it was 17 and I drove the green, and that's the hole I ended up birdieing. I was like, holy shit. So it didn't quite land on the green. It was like maybe 5 yards short, but like 10 yards to the right. But I mean, it had the distance to get to the green.
There you go.
But my biggest thing, so like the hardest thing for me is always chipping. Like whenever I chip, like I just said, like on 10, I chipped and I always shank it. I'd send it a mile past the hole, whatever it may be. I did like 10 bump and runs on Monday. And like, that was my saving grace, was doing that, because I was like, holy shit. And I just got to work on my chipping and putting, and maybe I'll break 90. Who knows? We'll see.
That's awesome.
Cut down to 15 3 putts around, and
damn right. And I only almost killed one person.
Oh,
that's an accomplishment.
That's a record, I think.
Almost. Yeah. Attempt is a lot different than actual.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the only depleting part is if you're able to beat that score next time, but you lose like 4 balls.
Yeah.
So this past weekend we had the 3M Open. Tony Finau won at 17 under. I mean, I did not see him winning by that stroke lead there. Especially going into the weekend, he was 4 under 67. And he ended up winning by 3 strokes.
Mm-hmm.
He erased a 5-stroke deficit through 11 holes. And it was just really amazing to see that comeback. We had talked 2 weeks ago when we were talking about golf and how Justin Thomas' comeback was just amazing, and that he had help from, remind me, what's the dude's name?
Mito Pereira.
Yeah, Mito Pereira.
Yeah, so he had Mito, who helped because he just couldn't get his putts to drop, and then just destroyed himself on the 18th. Kind of same scenario, just didn't happen on the 18th here. Scott Piercy, he tumbled out of the lead on Sunday. he scored a 76, and he tied for 4th. He bogeyed 4 of 6 before +3 on the 14th hole.
Yeah, that was watching him on the 14th was tough. It looked like me out there playing golf on a normal day. Because I think he hit it out of bounds to the right, took a drop, freaking was like, fuck it, I'm going for the green. Hit it into the water, had to take another drop, and then just like completely shanked it over the green. I'm like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? Like, just calm the fuck down.
Yeah,
I was like, holy shit. I guarantee his caddy standing behind the whole time too, going, what the fuck? Like, you're costing me a bunch of money. Like, I don't get paid enough as it is.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Like, that's not what I told you to do.
Fine, don't fucking listen to me.
3 fucking shots in a row. What are we doing here?
Well, that's like, there's this guy on TikTok. He's like, if like shitty golfers had caddies, and the caddy's like, okay. He's like, let's just hit a nice bump and run here. We'll get it within like 5 feet, maybe 2 putt it, and we take a bogey, we go to the next hole. The guy's like, okay, better idea. What if I flop shot it like Cam Smith within like 3 inches of the hole and putt it for birdie? The guy's like, can you hit a flop shot? The guy goes, no. What the fuck are you saying that for? He goes, well, maybe I can. He's like, I just want to get hot near the back nine. And the guy's like, shut the fuck up. Like that. I get that's what his caddy's sitting there going like, okay, yeah, fuck it. I'm here for no reason.
Yeah.
Yep. So this past weekend was just crazy. What were your guys' thoughts on the weekend and just Tony Finau's amazing tournament. We'll start with you, Nick.
Yeah, so it was great to see him finally get back in the win column. I believe it's his third tour win now. He's been having a good year. We have talked about him a little bit previously. There's times where he gets hot, especially when his putter gets hot, where he finds himself up at the top of the leaderboards.
I wouldn't know what that's like.
It happens. Me neither. But, obviously not as many big names in the tournament this past weekend. So it was definitely his opportunity to shine, and he took full advantage of it. And it's worth mentioning that after one day, he is currently sitting in first in this week's tournament or weekend's tournament. So definitely getting hot. I'm not sure where he's at as far as like FedEx Cup points or anything like that, but nonetheless,
he's like 11th or 17th. 17th. I think he went from 34th to 17th.
So yeah, he's up there. So definitely a good time to be getting hot as we get into the playoffs. Another thing I just wanted to mention: Sung J M, 20 years old.
I'm trying to find him,
but
sorry, Sung J M.
Yeah, 20 years old. He was right there behind him. I think he's got a very promising future on the tour. 20 years old, and he's been competing really the last couple weeks. So I just wanted to touch on that a little bit. That was good to see those two guys kind of at the top there in a tournament that, with the way they've been playing, they really should have been at the top of. So hopefully we'll see that carry on, as we get into playoffs or other tournaments or whatever. How many weeks do we have before playoffs start? I think we mentioned it before.
There's one more tournament and then the playoffs start.
Okay. I knew it was close, but
I just want to take a sidebar real quick. I don't want to interrupt you again.
No,
but Asians and little kids are two things you'd love to touch on. And on another note, Finau is actually up to 6th in the FedEx Cup standings.
Oh wow!
Nice.
Yeah, so
maybe I was looking at world.
Good for him.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Okay,
I guess that's probably the world rankings. He's up to 17th.
Okay, George, that comment. The Asian little kids. All right, so do you have any more thoughts on golf last week?
No, yeah, like I said, I shared most of my my thoughts there. But I mean, it's good for Finau to get another win. I mean, this is the first win where his whole family was there, so that was pretty cool to see. I know he's really loved by a lot of the tour players, and he has been since he really came onto the scene a couple years ago. But I guess, God damn, fucking Waynesboro.
That must sound a whole lot louder to you than it does to me, because every time something passes,
it's not as bad as last week. Like last week, it sounded like the dude like opened your door and like started his truck right next to you.
That's Waynesboro for you.
But no, so yeah, that was super cool to see, and the congratulations he got from everybody, and he's getting hot at the right time. He's won last week. He's leading right now. I don't know if he's playing next week or not. But once FedEx Cup playoffs start, he won the first round of the playoffs last year. So it's a tournament that he knows he can do well at. Hopefully he can just translate that into a better finish going forward this year in the playoffs. But we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I did not know that was the first time that his family got to see. That's crazy that we got to see that twice now. Who was it? Cameron Young, right? No, Cameron Smith. Cameron Smith.
At the Players?
When he had won, his family, that was the first time that they were allowed into the country from Australia.
Yeah.
Since COVID started. Moving into our next
topic. That ball. Oh, sorry. Different. Sorry.
So we had some racing at Pocono this past weekend. Me and Tater were watching.
So I heard.
So I think that the first thing to talk about would be that in practice on Saturday, or not practice, sorry, qualifying on Saturday, Kurt Busch actually made the final round of qualifying before dumping the rear end of his car into the exit of turn 3. It was pretty cool to see because I was sitting between between the front stretch and turn 3. So got to see that. He got out and got into the truck. Wouldn't even thought that he had a concussion. He didn't even get in the ambulance. And then he's out. Ty Gibbs is in. What were you guys' thoughts on Ty Gibbs first, starting the Cup Series?
I mean, Nick's going to talk about this more. I mean, it's all but sealed that Kyle Busch is leaving next year, and the only viable replacement for him is Ty Gibbs. We've seen how good he is in Xfinity. Last year he only had limited starts. I think he won half of his starts. And this year, want to say he has 3 wins. I mean, probably even more than that in Xfinity. But he's shown that he's a great talent in the Xfinity series. And so, I mean, there's been a lot of drivers where we've seen, dominate the Xfinity. They come to Cup and they're just not the same. Cole Custer comes to mind. I think he had like 9 wins, and then came to Cup and he only has 1 win to his name so far. So a lot of people were wondering if, is the talent going to translate or not? Finished 15th in the race, gets bumped up to 13th with the disqualification. I thought he ran a really good race all day. He wasn't getting in trouble. He kept his nose clean. I think it was more so, hey, let's just find my groove here. Let's not tear up a race car, and let's just have a solid day. And that's exactly what he did. Now this week, I'm not gonna say he's gonna be more risky with his driving, but he'll probably be a little bit more comfortable. He'll have more seat time in the car. Last week, he literally got thrown in with no practice time at all. And so to see him adapt that well was cool to see.
He had never sat in the simulator for a Cup car.
Yeah.
Last week when he got into that car was the first time he had ever seen Cup time.
Yeah, and so I think that just speaks to the talent that this kid has. And so I 100% see him in the Cup Series next year. I think Busch, and there's been a couple of rumors about this. I don't know how true it is, but in my mind, I see Busch going to Stuart Haas and running the 41 car. But I mean, we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But yeah, I mean, for his first start, I thought it was really cool to see him run as well as he did. And I think this week going to a road course, especially where anything can happen, he's absolutely a threat.
Wait, is Custer's contract up?
I believe so.
I know Eric Almirola, this is his last year, but I didn't know that Custer also.
Well, so yeah, it's Almirola's last year, but there's a lot of talk about.
Yeah, no, I understand the talk that you're saying. Yeah. I just assumed that if he went there, he'd be in the 10, not the 41. So that's why I was.
I mean, I see him going there, whether it's in the 10 or the 41. It's just I've heard on Twitter there's been a lot of rumors of him taking over the 41, whether that be Custer moves to the 10 or I don't know, but that's just what I've seen. All right. Just thought I'd throw that tidbit out there.
Nick, we will get you to the Ty Gibbs talk in just a second. I just want to kind of like list all of our points here that we want to hit, and then I'll let you guys both go into them. So Hamlin crosses the line first, then Kyle Busch, then Chase Elliott. About 2 hours after the race, it's announced that Chase Elliott is your winner. I don't think a lot of people knew this or even thought about it, but up until this weekend, the top 5 cars and 1 random car selected at every track are fully torn down at the track within that 2-hour period. They do a quick check of everything that they would do back in North Carolina. And so there they found these pieces of like tape or vinyl on both the 11 and the 18. They ruled DQs for both of them. Big loss for Kyle Busch. I think of the two, I think it hurts him the most because he needs all eyes on him for good news right now. And even though he can't help that someone put this on his car or somewhere they were trying to kind of mess with the rules, whatever, but it just doesn't look good for him. McDowell was also dinged. He was fined after a great 6th place finish. I think he was fined like $100,000. He was docked 100 points. If there was ever someone that was already going to have a hard shot at making the playoffs and was actually doing pretty decent this season with his like middle of the pack places, this dude just got a punch to the gut. Hamlin was playing with Ross Chastain with like, I don't know, maybe 20, 30 laps left. He ran him up into the gravel coming out of turn 1. It's the best way to kind of get that little bit of payback without counting it as payback because he didn't put him in the wall. He just ran him up to where he was in no man's land, basically. There was no chance of him getting that back. He got up there, and then he ends up spinning the car out. After the race, he said that he knew it was coming. There's nothing he could do there. I think he could have chose the inside line there, but other than that, Chase Elliott is on a roll right now. He won this past weekend after the 2 DQs. That is, what would that be? 3 wins in 6 weeks, and he's been in the top 2 in the last 5 races. What are your guys' thoughts on this jam-packed weekend of what happened just at Pocono and just overall with how NASCAR is going to look. I mean, it's already been ruled that Kurt Busch is out this weekend in Indy, and Ty Gibbs will sit in the car, like George had said. Nick, we'll start with you. What were your thoughts on Pocono?
Yeah. So first thing, just to touch on real quick, Ty Gibbs. I think he's got a promise.
Stop touching people, bro. God damn.
No.
Yeah, he's pretty young.
That's why I said kids and nations.
Kids and nations. But you know, he's got a great test this week with the road course coming up. I think it's perfect timing, honestly. You know, obviously you don't hope that anybody gets a concussion. I mean, maybe if you do, it's probably one of the Bush brothers, but nonetheless, you know, it's perfect timing. We can see him in an. I said if you do. I didn't say me personally. I said if you do.
My fantasy team.
Yeah, but
you did this yourself.
Fair. Get to see him on a road course. Obviously now he has to practice, which I think is good. I think if they would have sent him on the road course without ever stepping foot in the car, it might have been a little different. But now he knows how the car feels. Obviously it'll be set up a little different, but nonetheless. As far as Hamlin and Chastain, yeah, he had it coming. Yeah, he probably should have taken the inside line. Maybe he figured it was going to happen one way or another, and taking the top line was the easy way out for him. Whatever. I think that this kind of should settle the score. You know, you got somebody racing for the lead, and next thing you know, he's out. I think it kind of humbled him a little bit. And he's like, okay, you're still going to see some shit out of him. He races. I like the way that he races, but I think he's going to be a bit more. I'm not sure what word I'm looking for here that would describe it, but
he could be a little bit more gentle when he races.
More calculated, I think. A little more calculated about who he does it when he does it. Maybe, or he just continues to do it and whatever. As far as the DQs go, if I read this correctly, this was the first time that NASCAR has stripped a driver of a win due to a post-race disqualification in 62 years.
Yes.
And both of the top two drivers belong to Joe Gibbs Racing, which obviously, you know, is going to raise some concerns. Something was going on there. Yeah. It was. We'll touch on it here in a little bit, or touch on it a little more. Shut up, George. But it was a weird
word.
It was a weird.
We'll
follow up on it.
We're gonna talk about it. We're gonna follow up on it. Stop touching.
I'll touch up on whatever I want to touch up on. All right.
I mean, that's not legal. Whatever.
Well, see, I have respect. It's got to be legal. But weird weekend in racing.
John.
Yeah, Yang twins, boy.
Yes, sir. But like I said, we'll talk about it here in a little bit.
I need a police siren. Okay.
So first off, Nick, I do not think that this is the last time that Hamlin's going to put Chastain in the wall. He got put in the wall 4 times this season.
No, I was saying that I think
I understand after that what you meant, like when you
not Hamlin,
but your
Hamlin's going to do what Hamlin does. Yeah. That's whatever. I was talking more Chastain.
Yeah, I don't see Chastain changing anything about him.
Justin Marks is telling him the complete opposite.
Yeah. Well, like so both of the incidents between Chastain and Hamlin, the first one was absolutely Chastain's fault. He straight up just drove in the back. The one at Atlanta was just a dumb mistake by Chastain. You go into I understand you get tight and it's, I think it was like 10 laps to go at that point. He didn't want to lift and get past. I understand that. But at the same time, if you don't lift, you're going to wreck your car. Like that was just a boneheaded move by him.
And he had the fastest car on the track.
He was literally damaged to shit, and he was still in the top 5. My thing with the Pocono, and it was everybody's like, oh, he retaliated. No, he didn't. All he did is he's like, okay, if this is how people are going to race me, if they're gonna constantly try to shove me up the track, whatever it may be, I'm just gonna give it back. They went in the turn 1, and Hamlin started drifting up the track. He didn't turn the wheel right. He didn't pit maneuver him. He didn't do anything. He just said what he did was he put his car in
turn left.
Yeah, what he did is he put his car in a position and he said, "Okay, you're here." And there's one of two things that are gonna happen. One, you're just gonna stay there and you're gonna hit the wall, or 2, you're gonna back out and get behind me. But I'm leaving it up to you whether we have a wreck or not. Like, this is not my decision right now. It's up to you. And Chastain did what Chastain always does, and he stood his ground, and I respect that. But he ended up paying the price. What I'm more pissed off about is the fact that fucking Kevin Harvick got taken out, sitting in 4th fucking place.
That was the worst part.
I was so pissed. I was like, fine. That was cool to see.
Was so defeated.
Oh my god, bro, I was so pissed off. But
that's what I meant. Like,
in the Busch Light Apple.
Yeah,
I think that Chastain is just gonna have that in the back.
That's just yeah. And listen, he might start racing Denny with more respect, and that's what Denny wants.
Yeah.
But this is the first time that we've seen in a long time, at least I would say, we've seen a driver say, "I'm not putting up with it anymore. I'm not putting up with it anymore." And then finally he gets put in a position where it's like, okay, are you going to put up with it? Or are you going to shut up? And Hamlin's like, I'm not putting up with it. And he stuck his nose there and he said, listen, you're going to have an accident or you're not. And that was really cool to see. Just for once, somebody kind of like, I'm not a Hamlin fan by any means, but it was just cool to see somebody finally say something and then back it up with their actions on the track. And now if I'm the rest of the garage, I'm looking at him going, fuck, I don't want to be on his bad side. Like, this is just a race at Pocono with two guys that have already locked into the playoffs. Like, if you think about, like, if that would have been Kevin Harvick, who's on his bad side, somebody that's trying to race again into the playoffs, and Hamlin did that to him, like, that ruins your whole season. But, I mean, I feel like that's what a lot of these drivers need to do, especially the older guys, because I feel like that's more so who it is. These younger guys are coming in and just, oh, I'm good. You know, I don't need any mentoring. I'm going to race how I race. And the old guys are like, listen, like, that's fine, but like, you still need to understand that we're good and we deserve some respect.
As long as we're still on the track, you're going to drive how we're driving. Or...
Yeah. Like, you don't need to drive through me going to turn 1 on lap 50 at fucking Gateway. Like, that's just unnecessary. And so, I mean, I think we're getting to the point where these guys are just going to start pushing back. And, you know, I hope it starts leading to more rivalries. Like I said, it's the best thing that could happen in NASCAR was a rivalry. And we're finally getting that, and it's cool to see how it's playing out now. It's a storyline. It keeps people interested and wants to, you know, bring people in. Oh, hey, you know, there's guys over here, you know, wrecking each other basically. Let's go watch a NASCAR race.
The worst part is that I feel like the rivalries are somehow always centered around Denny Hamlin.
Yeah, I 100%
had Denny
agree.
Hamlin, Chase Elliott, Denny Hamlin, Logano. Now Denny Hamlin, Chase.
It's like Hannah sat down and watched the last 10 laps with me, and I was like, the only reason I was like kind of happy Denny Hamlin was winning is because Slade's dumbass put $100 on him to win, and he would have won $900. I was like, well, we need to do it for the brand. And so I'm sitting there going, all right, I guess I'm kind of cheering for Denny Hamlin, especially once he started pulling away from Kyle Busch. I was like, well, if I had to pick, I'm going to pick the guy that's going to win my friend $900.
Yeah.
But I was like, all right, well, it's over. And I was like, the fans started booing at when he was on the start finish line. And Hannah's like, oh my God, why is he getting booed? I was like, because he's a dick, basically. Like, people don't like him, and like a lot of people don't. So that's just where it's at right now.
Let's not forget, just to tell the people at home. So Slade not only cashed out the $900 he won from Denny Hamlin.
No, you missed this conversation. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Man.
Sorry. No, the craziest part of the story is that me and the other guy that put money on Denny Hamlin, we originally tried to place the bet on Kyle Busch, which would have netted us like $1,600, but it didn't go through.
Oh, man.
And then we put it on Hamlet, and it went through, and he ends up winning.
Jeez.
That was fate. That was fate telling you.
Right. That's exactly what we said. As soon as it didn't go through twice, I tried twice. As soon as it didn't go through twice, I'm like, nope, that's not happening.
You got to back out.
And so then went with Hamlin. I had already before the race put money on Elliott. So FanDuel is the one that I had Elliott through. And they only count the driver that passed the line first.
But I mean, it sucks that they didn't give you the DQ money. But at the end of the day,
it's whoever's
you still won $100 So.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But as far as sorry, just while we're talking about the DQ stuff, listen, do I think it's stupid that they were disqualified over a piece of fucking tape? Yes, I do think it's a little stupid. But at the same time, NASCAR has been especially with this new generation car, we are very black and white with the rules. This is what you're allowed to do. If you get this part from another manufacturer, you are not allowed to touch it. This is what you get. This is what Richard Childress gets. This is what Stuart Haas gets. You cannot touch these pieces. And the place they had the tape over, you know, was a piece they weren't supposed to touch. And I get a lot of people arguing, well, you know, these cars go out there and they get beat half the shit half the time. You know, they get taped over on all their fenders. Like, why doesn't that matter? It's like, okay, there's something between trying to finish the damn race and just flat out trying to gain an advantage. Was it that much of an advantage? I don't know.
Well, here's the thing. it has to be some sort of an advantage because they put it on the fucking car before they wrapped it.
Yeah.
It was only found because on the 5 cars, the top 5, they pull the wrap up off the aluminum part or off the metal part of the car.
Yeah.
And that's when they saw it. They would not have seen it.
And from what I read, they were saying that it could pose some sort of aerodynamical. Yeah.
But I'm just saying at the end of the day.
Yeah, I get it though.
Yeah,
they made the car wider, is what they said.
Yeah.
Even if it was by thousandths of a
that,
millimeter or something like that.
That's what you need nowadays.
Right.
And like I think back to, I think it was 2019 with Harvick at Vegas.
The window.
They took that support out of the window and it just dimpled in, but it helped the air suck down the back that much more. Like it. Listen, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying, and I respect that.
Especially this close to the playoffs.
Yeah, and I'm not going to bash anybody, but at the same time, NASCAR has made it very clear. Listen, these are the rules. These are black and white, and these are the repercussions. And Mike Joy was on Dale Jr.'s podcast this week. If you haven't listened to it yet, I highly recommend you go do that. It was a great interview learning about Mike Joy's career, but the first thing they talk about was the disqualification, and Mike Joy said, listen, I don't care how insignificant you think it was. The rules are black and white. There's no gray area anymore in a lot of these rules. It's black and white, and you need to be on the right side of that rule. If you're not, you know what the penalty is. And he was in the wrong. He got the penalty. Like I said, at the end of the day, that's what it is for me. Yeah.
Also, people are very upset that a level 2, level 1 penalty with the driver points docked and stuff like that. They feel as if the Hamlin and Busch should have gotten those. But I think that people are forgetting that they got points as if they didn't show up for the fucking weekend.
Yeah.
Well,
they lost. Kyle Busch lost his stage win that comes with playoff points. They each got like 2 points for the weekend versus the 40 and like the 38.
They basically they finished last.
Right.
Yeah.
But
see, I would argue
money at this point wouldn't have done anything. The 30 driver points, even if they docked Kyle Busch 100 points, they said he'd still be 20 points ahead of his brother, who is the last person with a win in the playoff contention right now.
Yeah. Well, it's like, and you touched on Mike. You talked about Michael McDowell.
Right.
I would argue he honestly got a worse penalty because his crew chief is now suspended for 4 weeks. And like Hamlin came out and argued, he's like, well, his points, I would trade places with that in a heartbeat because, what I got affected my playoff standings a lot more. It's like, okay, it only affected your playoff standings because you technically didn't get a win now. Like, you already have a win. You're locked into the playoffs.
Right.
Like, you're fine. This guy is fighting to get into the fucking playoffs right now. And now he just lost his crew chief for 4 weeks. He's 100 points further back than what he was before. Yeah. You can't tell me that hurts your playoff chances. You're in the playoffs. You're fine. Yeah. He is trying to make it there. Now, granted, he can still win and get in. Like I said, we have a road course this week. I think they go to Richmond, and then they go to another road course, and then we have Daytona still. Michigan. So there's in Michigan. So essentially, I feel like there's 3 wild card races. We don't know how Michigan's going to run this year with the new package and stuff. That's basically going to turn into like a Daytona type race with how wide open they run around there. But just when he made that comment, I was like, you're kind of a little tone deaf because this guy is fighting to make the playoffs. You're in safe. Yeah, you lost a couple bonus points for the playoff seedings or whatever, but I don't know. That kind of aggravated me.
I think it's situational. I think at this moment, yes, it way more affected Michael McDowell. But down the road, this really affected Denny Hamlin because he could go from being like 3rd or 4th in the points to 5th or 6th, which that's the difference from him making the round of 4 or the round of 8,
I mean, I would say
that's saying him not getting, or that's the difference of him getting into the round of 8. If he didn't get a win in the first 2.
Yeah. My 2 things for that. So going into the, like, if you have that much of an issue, go win another fucking race and stop bitching about it. Like, that's my first thought. But like the way that
he found that as his last opportunity. That's his best track.
I mean, I would argue, it's his best track, but he's going to Richmond. He's usually done
well at Richmond. He's got 6 wins there. It's his best track.
Yeah, I'm not saying he's not his best track. I'm just saying he's going to Richmond where he usually runs well at. Michigan is there's wild card tracks coming up, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, Darlington, Richmond,
Daytona's coming up.
Best, yeah.
Yeah, Daytona's coming up. He's won the 500 a couple times. But I'm just so like going into the playoffs, like, yeah, it's going to affect the seeding for the first round. But going into the next round, at that point, I'm pretty sure it's null. Like, it's just how many points you had on the first, like through the first round. It just
your
resets
playoff points travel with you.
Okay.
So all of Chase Elliott's wins will travel with him each stage. Until the final four, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, I fucking hate the goddamn playoffs. So
yeah, it's dumb. It's dumb. But that's why he has his personal. Obviously, I think that Michael McDowell's penalty is worse.
Yeah.
But
yeah, okay, it's
later
worse
in the
now.
Playoffs, it'll affect him.
Okay. I see where I agree.
Nick, do you have any more?
Trying to fucking speed us along here.
How did your dad like Pocono?
Oh, I guess he enjoyed it. I didn't hear no complaints. The man, you put a beer in his hand and give him anything, he's good.
I got burnt to shit.
I believe it.
Yeah. So I think that last thing on Pocono for me would be that it's crazy to think that the Cup Series had so much controversy and like hype around it, but the last 20 laps of the Xfinity Series were the best 20 laps ran at the track all weekend. Between the 4 series that were run there, watching Noah Gragson and Ty Gibbs just put the pressure on each other for 24 laps, I think is what it was just insane. And to see Ty Gibbs get up underneath Gregson a couple times, and then Gregson almost not be like able to get beside him, and then just completely clear him in the next corner was just ridiculous.
Yeah, no, that was a great finish to watch. I mean, like I said,
I've seen a few of those.
Yeah, because you're a cuck that sits in the corner. But you walked right into that one, didn't you?
I did.
But no, yeah, like I said before, I'm a pretty big Gregson fan. I want him to do well. But yeah, I have admittedly not been a big fan of Ty Gibbs so far. I think he's just, I guess, privileged is the word. Or that's just how he acts sometimes. But both of them, they put on a show. Listen, they used each other up, but at the same time, it was pretty clean. Like they weren't dumping each other. They weren't trying to wreck each other. They were like, listen, I'm just gonna beat your ass at the finish. And that was a really, really good finish of the race to see.
Do you guys have any more on NASCAR part of racing this weekend?
No.
George, do you want to give us some info on how the Indy cars did in Iowa this past weekend?
Yeah, I'll make it quick because I know Nick's a grumpy old man that wants to go to sleep. But yeah, so it was a doubleheader in IndyCar. Joseph Newgarden just straight up dominated. They won. He's dominated that track since he's come up into the IndyCar major leagues. Day 2 was a lot of the same story. Pato O'Ward didn't have much for him. He had lapped all but 5 cars at one point, and then all of a sudden, come out of turn 4, the back end just snapped on him, and he went right into the wall. And all of a sudden, it was a brand new race. Pato O'Ward goes on the win. That was really good for his point standings. I think he jumps up to third or fourth. And now this week they're going to the Indy GP to run a doubleheader with NASCAR. So that's going to be a lot of fun to see. Hopefully that gets more eyes on IndyCar this week. I thought it did a pretty good job of that last year. I hope it does an even better job this year. Just the scary news about Joseph Newgarden. So after the accident, he was checked. He was cleared. After the race, there was a concert. And I don't know if what happened was at the concert or before. I know a lot of the drivers went to the concert afterwards. At some point after the race, Joseph Newgarden just collapsed out of nowhere. They rushed him back to the Infield Care Center. They checked him out. They actually airlifted him to the hospital just as a precaution. They didn't want to drive him. It was just easier to fly him. Flew him there. He was held overnight. Everything was fine. It was reported that he just fainted. Nobody knew what from what. He was checked Sunday night, released Monday morning. Wasn't sure whether he was going to race this weekend or not. And the press release actually just came out today on Thursday saying that, listen, he's good to go. He's going to run practice tomorrow on Friday. They're going to, after practice, going to pull him back into the care center, just double check him again, make sure he's good to go before they clear him for the full weekend. Santino Ferrucci is on standby for him if he needs it. They haven't, like I said, they haven't released a lot of details as to what it was. Was it a concussion? Maybe was it heat? Things like that. But as of right now, he's doing a lot better, which is good to see. I'm not a huge Penske guy, but it's never good when you see a driver just collapse after a race, especially when they were in a hard wreck like that. So hopefully he's good to go.
Nick, do you have anything to share about IndyCar or any thoughts on what George has said?
Yeah, just glad to know that he's all right. I'm not a big Penske fan either, but George and I together have seen, especially like since it's Pocono weekend, a pretty bad wreck at Pocono in the IndyCar. I've watched a few wrecks together.
I texted Slade because in the Xfinity race, Jeb Burton ended up flipping into the front stretch. I was like, "Holy shit! All three of us now have seen a wild wreck at Pocono." Like,
yeah, right.
We're cursed.
But just like I said, just glad that he's okay. Especially now, when I wrote up my notes, nobody was sure if he was going to race or not. But obviously now we know he is. So it's good to see that he's cleared and hopefully will remain cleared after practice and he can get back in there and continue to have a good season.
Yeah, I'd assume that. I mean, I think that it was probably just a miscalculation with fluids and stuff because they lose so much weight wearing those fire suits this time of year. I mean, we heard that Tony Stewart in NASCAR would lose anywhere from 8 to 12 pounds a race. I can't imagine how much the F1 and IndyCar guys are losing in a race. Just insane.
Tony Stewart had a few to give every race though, so.
Yeah, I mean, he was drinking a half case of beer before every
race. Yeah, it was all beer weight.
Especially that one on the dirt. Yeah, so moving.
Oh my God, that's fucked up. I just got that. You're jackass. Oh my God.
Moving into George's favorite part of today.
Episode.
It's like, which one on the dirt? And I went, oh my God, I forgot he killed that guy.
Yeah, so moving into George's favorite part for sure this week would be the ACC preview.
Oh, I thought we were talking about Ryan Reynolds' ass. Sorry.
In this episode, I thought that was next week.
So before we get into the preview, well, it's part of the preview, but it was just a crazy thing that I saw on ESPN. It said that former Virginia Tech linebacker Izzy Atute is going to play for Iowa Community College after being found not guilty of murder. He was released from Virginia Tech when he was accused of murder. He was accused of murder after being catfished by a dude. And on the second date of meeting this person, he beat his face after getting a blowjob when he turned the light on his phone and saw that he was getting a blowjob from a guy.
Hold on. First of all, the second date.
Second date.
Second of all.
How did you make the first one?
The second time that they met up. Both times were
What makes you suddenly turn on your flashlight?
Felt that 5 o'clock shadow.
What makes you like allow someone to give you a BJ without like you?
I'm not 100% sure if you're a dude or not.
They met on Tinder.
Yeah, you didn't get a good enough look at this man to know.
Jay turned off the Wi-Fi.
He froze with his hand like this.
Oh my!
That
is absolutely.
You heard blowjobs and dudes trying to flag down a truck.
Oh my! That is. I just want to know how I got to the second date. Like that's my biggest thing. Like if it would have happened on the first date.
You know what? Next week,
I still have questions, but
the college football preview, we're all researching how in the hell this went down. The next episode is just us breaking this down because I have a lot of questions.
So the jury actually found him not guilty and said that when he turned his flashlight on and saw the guy, that the guy went to reach for between the bed and the bed frame, and so out of self-defense, he started beating the dude. He beat the guy a couple of times and then left, and that's when the guy was found dead. But when the police investigated, there was a knife in the side of the bed. So they claimed that it was self-defense, and that's how he's getting off. I mean, I'm sure he got off that. Yeah. So can you imagine going to your next school and be like, so
I can't imagine any of this. I just want to make that clear. Not a single step of this.
And this was on ESPN. This was on the ESPN app. the first thing that popped up when I brought up the ACC preview for this year.
I mean, the craziest part is, I mean, that Iowa Community College is going to get an absolute killer on defense. So I mean, that's going to be a tough defense to game plan against.
You'd think that George wrote the script on this.
Yeah,
he wanted that one. God.
So,
all right. Other than that, I don't even know if we can continue with the ACC.
Yeah. How do you follow that up?
So the first part of the ACC preview for this week, we're going to talk about Clemson. Clemson has been under fire. They were third in their division of the conference last year, and just a poor year if you think about how Clemson has been the last 6-7 years, maybe longer.
Mm-hmm.
How long do you think it was?
I would argue back like 10 years. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I think back to like they were never like a national championship contender a lot of those years, but I mean they were still making Orange Bowls and
So
stuff like that.
I think that the stat was that for the past 6 or 7 years, this past season was the first season under 10 wins for them.
Yeah.
Gambo Sweeney has said that he believes in his program and the way that he's put it together. He has been very well known to not go out for resources for coaches, for transfer portal people. He has promoted the QB coach to his offensive coordinator. He promoted one of the defensive specialist coaches to defensive coordinator because they lost both of their coaches there this past season. Do you guys think that Clemson will be back this year? We'll start with you, Nick.
Yeah, so when I was looking at this and when I went to answer this question, I assumed that be back would mean like college, football playoffs, that kind of be back. Because they ended the season after their bowl game 10-3, I guess. I believe. Should be right. Because you just said they didn't hit 10 wins last season, but when I looked it up, it said they went 10-3.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they won the bowl game.
Okay, yeah, so that would make sense then. I just wanted to clear that up before I got started. But that was no thanks to their offense. Every single one of those wins, you could praise the defense for. I mean, the offense showed flashes, but I'll get to that in a second. But Venables is now gone to Oklahoma, and everybody knows his genius was the drive behind that defense. Now, obviously, like Slade just talked about, defensive coordinator worked under him. What?
The defense coordinator was a genius behind the defense.
And he worked underneath him.
Yeah, but like...
Sounds like that Tinder date in Virginia Tech.
And we've seen coaches that work under different coordinators that come up and show that they've been paying attention. I don't know if we're going to see that this year. Obviously, it'll take a little bit to figure that out. But I don't think the defense is going to have a huge drop-off. My issue here is the offense, obviously. You got DJU. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce his last name.
No, I got this because I practiced so hard for those videos I made last year.
I want to hear it.
DJ Uiagalelei.
I'm going to just accept the fact that you said it right and call it a day. He threw for 10 interceptions last year with only 9 touchdowns. Obviously not a good season. If he stumbles this season, their backup is freshman Cade. I'm assuming that's Klubnik, maybe Klubnik. I don't know how to pronounce it. I do think that they could put together another 10-win season, but I don't think that we're going to see them, in the college football playoffs or anything like that. So I'm going to say no, they're not back yet. Again, they might still pop out another 10-win season after a bowl win, but I don't think they're back.
George, what are your thoughts on Clemson? Are they back this year? Do you think they get to the playoffs or a 10-win season minus, like without counting the bowl game? What do you think?
I think a 10-win season is definitely attainable for them. They have, at least to start the season, a much easier road this year. They don't play Georgia week 1. But much like Nick said, I think their defense will be fine. Their biggest issue is DJ in their quarterback slot. He was horrible to watch last year. Like that dead guy, he just blew. But
here you go, Nick. Here's your TikToks. Entire episode.
I think the offense overall will definitely improve a little bit. And they might even win the ACC. I think as a whole this year, the ACC is going to struggle to get a team in the playoff. And granted, their offensive coordinator is coming into the second year. They have 4 offensive linemen returning. Just like I said, when quarterback is the biggest question mark on your team. We talked about this last week with a lot of the teams. Wide receivers, I feel like, are among the easiest positions on the offense to replace. O-line and quarterback are probably the hardest. And we got so used to seeing great names come through Clemson. You had Watson, Lawrence, Boyd, like big names like that. And then all of a sudden, 2020, you saw DJ come up. He played the Boston College game and the Notre Dame game, and he actually looked pretty good. Like, hopes were high for him last year. There was even Heisman talk going into the season. All of a sudden, he starts playing, and he just shits the bed. I don't know if he just couldn't get comfortable, if it was a new OC or what it was. So, I mean, we'll find out really quick this year. Was it the OC, or was it, this guy's just not as good as we thought he was? My only problem is, so, like, we give him 3 games. They might win those 3 games, Dabo's going to be like, hey, listen, we think, Cade is a better option at QB, and they switch midseason. He might be a better option, but that almost never goes well, outside of a few rare exceptions. So I think overall that might hinder the team. But until DJ proves me otherwise, I just don't have faith in him as a QB. So like I said, I think 10 wins, obtainable. I think winning the ACC, definitely attainable this year. I think the ACC is wide open. I mean, we're going to talk about it more here as we get through this preview. But I don't see Clemson being a playoff team, at least this year.
One quote that I always remember, I heard it a few years back, is if you have 2 QBs on your team, you have no QBs on your team. So, like, if you go into a season and you don't know for sure if you can trust your starting quarterback, you might as well not have a designated starting quarterback.
Yeah.
So.
It's a good statement. I think it could change now that the transfer portal is so easily accessible. But we'll have to see. It's definitely a good statement for the current way that football is. I think that Dambo came out and said that they're sticking with DJ. George, what's his last name?
Uyunglele.
Yeah, so Dambo said that's their guy.
Right, hold on. Pause. What's the coach's name?
Dambo Sweeney.
You said it
Debo
3 different.
Samuels.
Dabo Sweeney.
Dabo.
You said it like 3 different ways. Sorry.
The first time I was like, did he? And I was like, yeah, whatever. And then I heard the second time and I was like, no, I'm pretty sure he definitely did that time.
Yeah, so Dabo Sweeney.
Yeah, there you go.
Said that DJ is their guy. Not quite sure about that. Like you guys said.
Like I said, he has shown great potential. It's just, like I said, was it the OC last year? Like a new OC? Was it just the fact that he just can't live up to that pressure nonstop? I don't know, but yeah, go ahead.
But here's what I also think. I think that the QB coach going to be the offensive coordinator for this season is going to be a big help, because if the QB coach that has been helping out DJ, is now there, I would assume that's going to help them kind of push the offense around the QB instead of getting the QB to play that style of offense,
Wait, who do you have as their offensive coordinator this year? I have Brandon Streeter. He was their OC last year. I think he might still be the QB coach, but maybe I read the wrong source. But
yeah, I don't know. I saw that Tony something or another left, and that the new guy was the QB coach. But that he might have been there last year also. I don't know. Whatever the case is. I think that Clemson still has a great season. I think that they win at least 10 games. With, like you guys had said, the ACC is pretty wide open this year. I have Clemson making the ACC championship this year. Whether they win or not, I don't know. But yeah. So the next team to talk about, which is not in the ACC, but basically is because that's the teams that they play all the time, would be Notre Dame. Do you guys think that Notre Dame is a playoff contender this year? What are your thoughts, George?
Fucking absolutely. I'm just kidding. I think they definitely have the potential to be. Just again, like Clemson, quarterback is their biggest question mark. They had Ian Book for the last few years. I don't know why I can't think of the guy's name from last year. Jack Cohn. Jack Cohn, that's what it was. So Tommy Rees, as the OC, has had stability there his first 3 years. This year, he's going to have to bring in somebody new. It's not quite 100% clear who that's going to be yet. They're also losing their top rusher in Kyron Williams, who left for the NFL. But at least at the running back position, they do have a little bit of solace with Chris Tyree, who we saw a decent amount of last year. So it's not like they have like a true freshman running back that they're just throwing out there. But you can expect him to take over the heavy workload this year. They also have some decent names at wideout, but no like big names. Like, I mean, when I think of Notre Dame, I think of Michael Floyd, Golden Tate, like a big name with a big body, that can go get the big catch or, whatever they need, whenever they need it. I mean, somebody might emerge out of that wide receiver corps. Excuse me. Just as of right now, they don't have anybody. My biggest thing for them is that scares me. They play Ohio State week 1. Now their defense has definitely improved, especially through the transfer portal and recruiting. Their biggest issue for years has been cornerback. Brian Kelly just never seemed to be able to bring a good quarterback in. They got some guys this year that have some speed, and so that should help them. Like I said, we know Ohio State, and we're going to talk about this next week. Ohio State stacked at wide receiver. So week 1, we're going to see what this Notre Dame defense is like. But like I said, their biggest question mark is on the offensive side and definitely the quarterback position. But they have a really tough schedule in my mind. Like I said, Ohio State week 1 on the road. They have road games at UNC. They play BYU on the road. It's technically in Vegas. It'll basically be a home game for them. They also play at Syracuse, who I think is going to be a sneaky good team this year, and USC on the road. They luckily get Stanford, Clemson, and Boston College at home, so that kind of helps them. As of right now, I have them going 10-2, and definitely making obviously a bowl game. But for this point, I have them going 10-2 and missing the playoffs. The only way I see them getting into the playoffs is if first of all, going undefeated would help, especially beating Ohio State. But if they lose to Ohio State and close and then run the table the rest of the way, and Ohio State runs the table, then you can say, hey, we lost to the number 1 or 2 team by like 3 or 4 points. They can make an argument then, hey, we deserve to be in the playoffs. But as of right now, I have them missing the playoffs at
10-2. Nick, what are your thoughts on Notre Dame this season? Are they a playoff contender, bowl contender, maybe nothing? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I mean, I definitely think they're going to make a bowl game. I think contender is a good word when you talk about the playoffs. I personally don't have them making the playoffs. I kind of have them in that 10-2. Maybe they drop another game, 10-3 or 9-3. Like George said, QB competition with no real starter decided yet. Now their O-line does have multiple potential future first-round picks, promising running back room, like George said. As it sits right now, the top-rated tight end in the 2023 draft. No proven wide receiver, like George said. Defensive side of the ball, third defensive coordinator in 3 years. But they do have playmakers and game changers at every level of that defense. Studded linebacker group. The talent is there in the secondary, kind of like George had talked about a little bit, but they lack some depth, which obviously, one or even both your corners go down. That's huge. So, like George said, I think the key is win or lose against Ohio State. I think you have to go into that game thinking, okay, yes, we want to win this game, but if we lose this game week 1 against Ohio State, it's not that big of a deal. Now, obviously, if Ohio State drops a game somewhere down the line, could get a little tight for them, even if they only have 1 loss. But like I said, I don't think that they quite have enough to make that Final Four. Now, again, with 2 losses, depending on how the rest of the country fares out by the end of the season, we very well could see a 2-loss playoff team, but that hasn't really been the case as of late. So I think they're going to be on the outside looking in.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I think that slightly, a little less. I would go 9-3, kind of like what Nick was saying is a possibility. I think that that's what they're going to end up with this season. I think that if they were in a conference, they would have a chance with that record to, depending on which side of the conference, who they had lost to, of winning a conference championship. But not being in a conference, I think the best they're going to get is a bowl game. I think also just week 1 in Ohio State is just a rough way to start the season for them, especially with how George had mentioned that they got hard hard spots to fill at cornerback position. I think that Ryan Day is just going to bomb it. He's just going to have them throw the ball 40-yard passes all day long.
So I will say this: it's definitely Ryan Day has shown a tendency, and like I said, we're going to talk about this a lot more in depth next week with the Big Ten preview. Ryan Day has shown a tendency for his teams to have a slow start. We saw that last year with Oregon. Oregon walked in there, and a lot of people thought Oregon didn't have a shot going into the horseshoe. But Ryan Day's team was sluggish, especially in the first half, and it just bit him in the ass. So again, it's not impossible. It's just with the question marks, it makes it a little bit more unlikely, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I think that it's going to be different this season. I think that they could win against Notre Dame by 20 points. I think just the comments Ryan Day mentioned after signing his contract extension like 2 weeks ago, in saying that 10-2 seasons might be good for other schools, but 10-2 seasons are not good at the University of Ohio State. At the Ohio State University. I think that just shows his confidence and his ability to really believe in his team that he's going to put out there this season. Wake Forest had a really great season last year. I think they ended up 11-3, maybe 12-3 after a bowl game.
it was 11-3.
So they ended 11-3. Do you guys see them having another great season? Nick, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so I'm going to keep this relative. When obviously they had a great season last year. When I think of Wake Forest, I don't necessarily think of them, in double-digit wins, especially, at least in my time growing up. I've seen a lot of seasons where they're, 5, 6, 7 wins. So we're talking double-digit wins here. I definitely think that they can do it again. They return their star QB in Sam Hartman. He's paired with an All-American candidate wide receiver in A.T. Perry. They got the new defensive coordinator from Purdue, Brad Lambert, who obviously, we've seen Purdue's defense last year. They have a relatively helpful schedule this season, and I think that we should definitely see them in that double-digit win column again.
What about you, George?
Much along the lines of Nick, I have them going 10-2 in the regular season, and I actually have them as my pick to win the ACC Atlantic Division. Over top of Clemson. They get Clemson at home, which is huge. You don't want to go in the Death Valley, with a conference or a division, deciding game on the line. Granted, it's kind of early in the season. It's September 24th. I guess about midway. You don't want to say early. But like Nick said, they have a very generous ACC schedule, and especially in preseason pre-conference play. They play Virginia Military Institute week 1. Like they have, I don't want to say an easy schedule because they definitely have tough games in there, especially with getting UNC at home. Again, that helps a lot. But I honestly thought last year Sam Hartman deserved a little bit of Heisman hype behind him. He didn't get it, and granted, throughout the last 3 games he played, he really fell apart. But when he's back, like Nick said, they get their big wide receiver back. They get a bunch of guys back from injury. They did lose their star running back, but again, they didn't rank in top 50 in rushing last year. And nationally, they ranked 11th nationally overall in offense and 12th in passing. So when you get your big part of your offense back, that's huge. Your defense really struggled last year, especially with giving up big plays, and they lost all their linebackers. But they get the new DC in. Especially coming from the Big Ten, you can expect that defense to be a little bit more hard-nosed. So if that defense could even improve slightly, this is definitely a team that can easily win 10 games again. And like I said, that's why I'm picking them to win the Atlantic.
Yeah, so I agree. I think that they could definitely win 10 games. I think that they will end up with the same record as Clemson. I think Clemson just wins the head-to-head, and that's what puts them into the ACC championship, or Clemson into the ACC championship for me. I think, just to keep it short, I think that they 10-3 is very obtainable for them. Heisman talk. Do you guys think that there is anyone in the ACC that you believe is poised to be involved in the Heisman talk this year? George.
Yes, and I just said his name, Sam Hartman. Aside from when he struggled last year, especially against UNC, NC State, and Pitt down the line, like I just said, he looked really, really good at times. The first 3 quarters of that UNC game, I remember watching that, and I went, okay, this guy deserves some Heisman hype. Fourth quarter, he kind of fell apart there a little bit. But he threw for 4,228 yards last year, 39 TDs, and 14 interceptions. And I think he's going to improve even more. He's shown steady progression over his first 4 years there, and I think that continues again. He kind of knows the expectations for him this year going in. And I think he'll settle into that offense a little bit more and be a little bit more prepared. And like I said, overall improved. And I think he absolutely deserves some Heisman recognition if he can improve upon his play from last year.
What about you, Nick?
Yeah, so I'm going to. I hadn't done it the previous. I believe it's been going on for 2 seasons now, and it's currently the 3rd season of it. And the first 2 seasons did not end well. But there's been a lot of preseason hype with Miami, and while I don't necessarily think the team itself is going to be crazy, I think that if there's one person that's going to stick out enough to be in the Heisman conversation at the end of the year, I think it's going to be Tyler Van Dyke, the QB from Miami. He went 5-2 with the Canes after taking over midseason last year. He's got new head coach in Mario Cristobal, which should help him succeed a little more. He has a very strong offensive line in front of him. His only need is finding his wide receiver one, which George had talked about a little earlier. Replacing wide receivers is one of the easier things to do in college football. I think that he'll be able to find that wide receiver one and hopefully get some chemistry with a wide receiver two, help spread the ball around. I don't necessarily think he's not one of my favorites, but I had to pick one, and I think that he's poised to have a great year this year. So he's who I went with. But again, finding his wide receiver is the big question mark here. If he can do that, I think he has the talent to, at the very least, be in the conversation come the end of the year.
Yeah, so I think that both of them are very good options. I don't think that either of them are sitting at the awards ceremony for Heisman at the end of the year. So, instead I would say Sean Clifford. But
Jesus Christ.
I thought George was turning his laptop off there.
Yeah. My hopes about Sean Clifford is that it's one of those rare occurrences George was talking about, and the backup QB comes in and plays better. So
Clifford the big red bitch, that's what I call him.
Yeah. So moving into, who do you guys believe is going to be sitting in the ACC championship this year, and who do you think is going to win? Nick.
Yeah. So hold on, you threw me off guard there in my notes. I had a question in between this one and the last one.
Slade likes to keep you on your toes.
Yeah, apparently.
Well, one of these teams would end up being the answer to the next team anyway, so I'll ask that next. Sorry.
Yeah, well, possibly. Don't know that for sure. But anyway, I'm going hot take here.
Nobody's not making the ACC championship and then making the playoffs.
I mean, if you got 9-3, maybe 10.
Answer the fucking question.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You could win the ACC championship and not make
maybe
the
SEC, not the ACC.
Well, no. Anyway. What Slade was saying is you can't win the ACC, you can't win the ACC championship, you can't not win the ACC championship.
Yeah.
You can't not win the ACC championship and not go to the playoffs.
Okay, sorry, I missed. Sorry, I got you. I'm with you now. So anyway, hot take: NC State. They finished last year 9-3, 7-0 at home, which I thought was pretty impressive. I mean, it's always good to have a good home record. But they returned almost their entire defense, which ranked 15th in points per drive allowed. 3 out of 5 of their starting linemen, one of the top QBs in the ACC, and overall, I thought this was pretty crazy. 82% of their team's production from last year is returning, which ranks 8th nationally. So obviously, I think that's a good position for them to be in, especially because it's rather quietly. Because you talk about Clemson, you can talk about UNC. There's a couple other teams in here that you can talk about, and I think NC State, while they're getting some recognition before the season starts, I think they're in a good position. They don't have a lot of pressure on them, and they have all the tools that they need to succeed. I think they have a great chance. And if you think about last year was the season of the underdogs in the ACC. I don't think that this year has any reason to be any different. So,
wait, who did you have? NC State and who?
He just said NC State. He didn't listen to the assignment.
Who would be the team from the coastal side that you would have? I'm assuming maybe Miami, since you had talked about their quarterback being a Heisman candidate.
Hold on. Let me look at. How was the question worded? Because I'm 99% positive it said who will win the conference or something.
Conference winner,
It says conference winner, and then it says
winner.
Atlantic.
You did the first, Atlantic.
Sorry,
You picked NC State.
I didn't. I got to
You're
look at
saying
it in front
NC
of me
State,
now.
best Clemson, and Wake Forest. We'll move back to you, George. Who do you
Uh,
have winning the Atlantic, and who do you have winning the Coastal of the ACC?
I have Wake Forest winning the Coastal actually, and I do this a lot. I pick a team that had a really good year the year before, and I'm like, all right, they're gonna do it again this year, and they're gonna win the conference. And so I apologize to Wake Forest in advance for jinxing them. But I'm picking them to win the Atlantic, and for the Coastal, I'm picking Miami. We're gonna talk about here in a minute. They are my most. I have them picked as my most improved team, even though they only finished second in their division last year. How I don't know. That's just how batshit crazy the ACC was last year. But I see them improving a lot. Pitt, the winner of that division last year, I think is going to fall off a lot. Therefore, that division's wide open. There are definitely a lot of teams in there that could win it, but I have Miami coming out of there. And then overall, I'm going to go with Wake Forest just because last year Mario Cristobal choked in our conference championship game, so why not do it again?
There you go. I'm going to agree. I'm going to go with Miami.
All
now
right.
that I've seen it in front of my eyes.
We're all going the same. So I also picked Miami. I think that they're going to be going up against Clemson, like I've mentioned before. I think that Clemson and Wake Forest end the season with the same record, but I think Clemson gets the head-to-head, puts them into the championship game. I see Miami winning this strictly because I just think that I've heard a lot about Mario Cristobal just from Georgia alone, and now ESPN picking him up. I think that he's all business, dude. He went there. One of the first changes, it's announced they're taking away the turnover chain. They're done with all the sideline like antics, basically. I mean, I think that Miami was one of the first to start something on the sidelines there. I mean, it was getting pretty ridiculous. They had like thrones and all kinds of shit on the sidelines at some point throughout the last 2 years. But yeah, so I think that they're gonna really be the big surprising team this year, especially with the quarterback, like you had mentioned, Nick. Um, so yeah, I do not see either of these teams though making the playoffs. I just think between the SEC, Ohio State, and um, just Ohio State and the three SEC teams, you just throw a dart at the top three as to which ones are going to be there. It's just crazy, and I think it's going to be hard for Miami and for Clemson to get out with no losses and be the ACC champion, which I think is what's going to be necessary for either of those teams to make it into the playoff. George, what's your thoughts on the playoff? You have Wake winning the ACC. Do you feel that that's enough to get them into the playoff?
No, I don't. Because like I said earlier, they're going 10-2. I think, like you said, between the SEC, um, the Big Ten with Ohio State, if Michigan's good, if Michigan State can continue to be good, like I said, we'll talk about that more next week. There's definitely a Big Ten team getting in this year, and then honestly, I have a Big 12 team getting in too, whether it be Baylor, Oklahoma State, maybe even Oklahoma. Who knows? Sure as fuck won't be Texas, but yeah, unless somebody can like have a really surprising season and run the table, and if that were to happen, I have three candidates. I have NC State, Wake Forest, and Clemson as being my three teams I would pick that even have like a remote chance of running the table and getting in. Other than that, I see every ACC team coming into conference championship week with 2 losses, and no 2-loss team is going to get in unless something absolutely batshit crazy happens this year. Yeah.
I think if there's a year that could happen, at least from what I've looked at of the college football landscape so far, like this could be the year, but I still like that's long shot.
Yeah.
Nick, what are your thoughts? You have NC State and Miami. Who do you think one of those teams has a chance at making the playoff?
I don't. I'm right there along with you guys. I'm thinking 9-3, 10-2 is what we're looking at here going into the conference championship game, and like we said, that's just slim chance that's gonna do it.
Yeah, I think that the main reason I have Clemson making the ACC championship is just because I think that they're able. Did you guys say they play Notre Dame?
Yeah, they play at
Yeah,
Notre Dame.
so I have them getting a win against Notre Dame, which at that point is 2 losses for Notre Dame on the season already, which is another reason why I don't think that Notre Dame is a playoff contender.
Mhm.
So yeah, I just think that neither team is going to go undefeated. So there's no real point of or no real thought for them to get into the playoffs. Moving into the most improved, George, you had already mentioned yours, but if you want to elaborate on it, go for it.
Yeah, like I said, I have Miami this year. Mario knows how to win. He just loses really stupid fucking games, which is what always hurt Oregon. Like I said, last year they beat Ohio State and then they turned around and lost to Stanford. Granted, it was on some bullshit calls. And then they got throttled by Utah twice because he refused to make any adjustments. Now, granted, they do have
George
a really
was
tough...
live streaming for one of those.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about that. Granted, they do have a really tough schedule this year. They play at Texas A&M, at Clemson, and at Virginia Tech. But I think overall they improve on their 7-5 record. At the very worst, I think they're walking into the ACC championship game at 9-3. Definitely 10-2 is on the table. That third loss I have is that Virginia Tech game. Listen, playing at Lane Stadium at night, I think Virginia Tech this year alone is going to be much improved. I honestly almost had them as my most improved team this year. Just because they were a little bit lower in the standings. They had a worse record. But I think Miami breaking through, improving upon a 7-5 record and making a conference championship game is why I put them as my most improved. But again, UNC and Virginia Tech were both really tough choices for me to leave off of this. So yeah, at the very least, I have Miami going 9-3 into the conference championship game.
Nick, what are your thoughts on your most improved team this season?
Yeah, so I went with Florida State. They had a mediocre 5-7 season last year. They returned 15 starters, including their quarterback Jordan Davis and all ACC safety Jamie Robinson. They got one of the top transfer targets in Jared Verse. I believe he's a pass rusher. I think that's going to set them up for bowl eligibility come the end of the season. And while the record might only, show 1, 2, maybe 3 more wins, I think that overall as a team, the improvement is going to look a whole lot more than 1, 2, 3 wins.
Yeah, so I kind of chuckle because George kind of mentioned this earlier, but my most improved team is Syracuse this season. I think they went 5-7 last year. I think that just them being able to get over 500 this season, maybe a game or two over, would be a really great accomplishment for them. I always like being able to watch a Friday night game or even a Thursday game when they're playing every once in a while, and it's in the like the dome or whatever the hell they play in.
Yeah, the Carrier Dome, sponsored by
just
an air conditioning company that's not air conditioned.
Yeah,
I always laughed at that. That shit always made me crack up when they were like, because it was whenever they're playing, and like that's the first thing the announcers bring up, like, oh, we're playing in the Carrier Dome, the Carrier AC company, and this dome isn't air conditioned. I was like, what kind of bullshit is that?
But that was like in high school playing at York Tech, a school like that literally has technical in its name.
York
And the
Tech,
motherfuckers
yeah.
they have lights, bro.
I'll never forget. I coached there a couple years ago when I coached at Fairfield, and they had like the concrete like pilings like poured, but they were grown over by weeds. It looked like they were poured like 5 years ago. I was like, oh my god, guys, just put the fucking lights in. Kennedale got lights. How can you not figure this out?
Ridiculous. Like you got students that literally are learning about electricity. Like have them wire the damn lights. Something. I don't. Whatever.
Must not be that great of a school.
If I can beat them in wrestling, they're definitely fucking not that good.
Yeah, looking ahead at our opposite of most improved. Sorry, I just had a stroke. Our most declined team this season. Nick, who do you think?
Sir, do it underneath your desk.
In the ACC,
are you gonna beat the shit out of him?
Yeah. Who's your most declined team?
Yeah, so I feel like this one's pretty obvious. I thought about choosing another one just because of how obvious this felt, but I went with Pitt.
I knew at least 2 of us are gonna pick Pitt.
Yeah, like you go from winning the conference to losing a Heisman finalist in your quarterback Pickett to the NFL. The Biletnikoff. There we go. I literally practiced it.
While you were doing that, your video stuttered a little also, so it made it nice.
Made it 10 times worse.
Yeah, if you would have just kept going, you would have been fine.
Oh, well, whatever. I don't care. I'll stutter again. And Jordan Addison to USC. God damn. and offensive coordinator Mark Whipple to Nebraska. Their future looks about like their past has looked the past couple years, which is kind of sad to say because even though I hate Pitt, the Kenny Pickett electricity was fun to watch, but very short-lived.
George, who's your most declined team in the ACC this year?
It's Pitt for pretty much the exact same reasons. I still have them making a bowl this year, but they have Tennessee, who they beat last year. But granted, this is a much improved Tennessee team from that game last year. They have West Virginia, and then they have road games at UNC, Miami, Louisville, but they at least get Virginia Tech and Georgia Tech at home. Like I said, I have them making bowls, whether it be 6-6 or 7-5, but definitely well with outside the top 2 in their division.
Yeah, so instead of agreeing with you guys, I'm just going to say that my most declined team for this season is going to be Virginia Tech. Because anytime you lose a murderer from your team, your team's just got to look.
But they got a Penn State guy now.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't equate to murder.
Murders and rapists.
Yeah. And if one of your best linebackers is getting blowjobs from a dude, what does that say about your school?
No, I'm not. Nope.
Unless that's what he.
I don't know if I can say what I was just.
I was gonna say, I take it wasn't rapists. It was child predators, but yeah. Which to me they're one and the same. But yeah.
Before we move into our top 5, what do you guys? Any more thoughts on the ACC preview?
No.
George, did you have 5 games that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah. I guess.
Why don't you give us those games, and me and Nick will pick which game we are most excited to watch after you choose your most exciting one.
So for the top 5 ACC games to watch this year, I also included Notre Dame in this as well, as we have so far throughout the episode. Number 5, Miami at Virginia Tech. I think this is going to be the game that decides the Coastal Division. I went to a game at Virginia Tech last year. That atmosphere is absolutely insane. I'm hoping to make it back this year. And so I have that as number 5. Number 4, I have UNC at Miami. I think runner-up to decide the Coastal Division. This game was a barn burner last year. I was actually at this game at UNC. It was a great game. Number 3, I have Clemson at Wake Forest. Like I said, I think these are going to be the 2 teams that decide the Atlantic Division. September 24th, they meet at Wake Forest. My number 2 game, I have Clemson at Notre Dame. The last time these guys played, it was for the ACC championship. The one off year, Notre Dame was in it, but they also played earlier that year with a outstanding game with Notre Dame's late comeback to win that. And number 1, I have Notre Dame at Ohio State. Anytime you get 2 blue blood teams to meet each other, especially week 1, it's going to be a great game. I hope to God that's not a noon kickoff, just because I hate big noon kickoff. It's absolutely stupid.
I don't think it will be.
You can thank Fox for that.
Yeah. Listen, so before we go into our actual top 5, or you guys discuss, this is how I think college football scheduling should work. Your noon kickoffs should be just run-of-the-mill games, whatever.
7:30 p.m. on ABC.
All right, perfect. But that should just be like your run-of-the-mill games, like games nobody really cares about. Your 3:30 games should be your top 25 matchups. And then your night games should be, top 10. If is a conference on the line, or is it a rivalry game? Like, I absolutely hate, like, the one of the greatest games from my childhood was Michigan at Ohio State when they were ranked, I think it was 2 and 3. Chad Henne, Mario Manningham, I forget the running back's name, something Hart at Michigan, and then on the Ohio State side, I can't think of it. Oh my God, I'm staring at the dude in the face. But it was like one of the most classic games. It was a night game, and I don't think they played at night since. And I don't know. I hate that. But I just hate college football scheduling sometimes. Stupid. Troy Smith. That was it. Troy Smith. There we go. I was staring at the back of his jersey. Dude's running all over Michigan. I was like, I couldn't think of it. So what games are you guys most excited for from that top 5?
Nick, what are you going for?
Yeah, so the obvious one is Notre Dame, Ohio State, but I'm not going to go with that one. I'm going UNC. It was UNC at Miami, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Last year was, yeah. So UNC at Miami. It seems like no matter how like one of those teams could be at the top of the conference, the other one could be at the bottom of the conference, and when they play, it turns into an absolute beautiful game to watch just about every year. So I'm excited to see that. I'm sure they're going to put on a hell of a game. Obviously, as of right now, Miami's looking like if they reach their potential, the better team. But UNC always has the ability to play above their expectations. And like I said, those two teams get together on the same field. They leave it all out there. I think that's going to be great to watch.
Yeah, so I think that Clemson Notre Dame would be my big game to watch, just because I had already said that I think that game is going to decide whether Clemson gets into the ACC championship or not. I also think that decides um whether they stand a chance with their season as a playoff contender, which I don't think they are, or like that would be them preceding my thoughts. To touch on what you had said, George, I gotta stop. We gotta stop saying touch.
You don't have to stop touching me.
The big noon game pisses me off so bad. So at the end of the season, Michigan and Ohio State are the big noon game also, which I think they were last year, but
they are every year. They play at noon every year.
Yeah,
it's just annoying.
It's because it goes to Fox, just like how Ohio State was supposed to be the whiteout for Penn State this year, and Fox got it, and it's like, well, I'm sure it's going to be played at fucking 12.
Yeah. To be fair, I absolutely love getting my day started by hearing Gus Johnson scream his fucking ass off. Like, I would run through a brick wall for that man. Like, I absolutely love Gus Johnson. I would much rather him though call an 7:30, 8 o'clock game between Ohio State and Michigan than a noon game. Like,
I can say, however, though, like as a football fan, like just sitting on the outside looking in, watching the games, it is nice to not have to wait till 7:30, 8 o'clock to watch a good game. Yeah. But like some of these games, like I said, like Penn State and Ohio State at Penn State, every single person in this world who gives any shred of a shit about either of those two teams is thinking whiteout, and Fox says, "Nah, I think we're gonna make it at noon." Like,
well, because I don't know if you remember. So it was a couple years ago, Penn State and Michigan were playing, and that was supposed to be the whiteout game. And for some stupid fucking reason, Penn State scheduled a concert for the same night, so they moved the football game up to noon. And so it was like still the whiteout. And I remember watching the game on TV, and it's like for the first half, nobody showed up because they're all getting shit faced at the tailgate, and then everybody showed up. But yeah. So they've tried the whiteout game the other day. They obviously realized it didn't work. So I mean, I applaud them for saying, "All right, fuck you, Fox. We're not doing it at noon."
Yeah, I understand being like, "All right, we'll make it Minnesota," but like you said, fuck you, Fox.
Which, I mean, we're gonna talk about this. I still think it's gonna be a great game. I think Minnesota is definitely in the running to be a Big Ten
I just think there's so much more emotion surrounding whether it's Michigan or Ohio State.
Oh, absolutely.
Time of the season, Ohio State fit perfectly for that game. Obviously, we'll get to talk about it more once we get to Big Ten, but I think that is the biggest disappointment I've seen on Penn State's schedule, because Penn State could literally be 4-8 on the season, and somehow they'll keep it close for the whiteout game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, just the credit or the video that they play every year of Michigan walking out onto the field in the first quarter and their quarterback not being able to get the ball snapped because nobody can fucking hear him.
Dude, Mo Bamba will do that to you.
To be fair,
ridiculous.
Nobody got showed up, and John O'Korn would have shit his pants in that game.
Yeah,
because John O'Korn was trash.
Well, yeah. So, moving into our next part, which would be our top 5. George, we'll start with you. Your COD kill streaks.
Oh, why do I have to go first? Number 5. I'm going with the cruise missile. Listen, you get a decent amount of kills with it. You usually pretty good. I want to say in the last Modern Warfare, you needed like 5 kills to get it. Number 4, I am gonna go with the turret. Especially when I think of that, I always think back to Modern Warfare 2, the original one. You just set that shit down anywhere and you rack up like 30 extra kills. Number 3, I am gonna go with UAV. Pretty simple, but I mean, for shitty players like me, it always helped me out. Number 2, I'm going with Juggernaut. Whenever you got that care package, you got to run around blaring Metallica and just dropping bodies. It was always cool. Number one, and I lied. / number two, I would also put dogs. I want to say it was Black Ops 2. That you got the kill streak where you had the dogs. And number one, AC 130. Like I said, I think back to the Modern Warfare 2 days. AC 130 bomb, and you're just, especially if you're on the enemy team, you just start shitting yourself immediately.
Yeah,
trying to hide. Yeah, and then bodies were flying all around. Shit, I mean, that was awesome.
Nick, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, so I'm not gonna lie, Cruise Missile threw me through a little loop because I wasn't originally planning on thinking it, but the more I started thinking about, like, it's efficient as long as there's more than, like, so, like, I play a lot of search, so, like, if you're using the Cruise Missile, I don't have to, but if you're using it, if there's at least 3 people alive, you're pretty much guaranteed to kill. If you're playing, like, team deathmatch, you're almost guaranteed a double kill. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna switch it up. I'm throwing Cruise Missile at 5 because I think that was a good idea.
Thank you.
Yeah, number 4, I'm gonna have to go ahead and say, I'm gonna go with the precision airstrike and or cluster strike, depending on which game you're playing. Because it's a good way to, like, if you have an open area, you know, you can lay that shit there, clear that area out, or force people to move. Number 3, I like UAV at number 3 because UAV is very efficient. Obviously, it's good to know where people are at, but that's pretty much all it does. It just tells you where the fuck they are, and if they have ghosts, it's worthless. But still efficient. I'm leaving it at 3. Number 2, I'm going to go with the what the hell do they call it in the last one? I forget what it's called in the most recent Modern Warfare, but the Harrier. I think
VTOL,
it was called.
the VTOL jet.
VTOL, yeah. VTOL for number 2. You know, you just set that shit, it bombs it, and then watch.
Oh my god! Every time that got thrown out on fucking shipment, it took everything I had not to throw my controller through my TV. Oh my god, that shit pissed me off so bad.
And number 1, obviously, I thought about putting the nuke in here, but that's for a very handful group of players, and I've never gotten one, so I couldn't even put it on the list.
Yeah,
number
like
1,
that's try hard Tommies, and like
yeah,
I always hated people that got it and used it anyway, because like the only time you should use that is like if you're in a match and your team is losing and you don't want to lose. Like other than that, like the match is over like 5 minutes early. It's like, why? Like just let us finish. So I hate when people don't let me finish.
Facts. Number 1, I got to go with the AC 130 or Chopper Gunner, depending on what game you're playing. It's stupid. Unless you're in a map that has a shit ton of buildings, then it's kind of a pain in the ass. But nonetheless.
Yeah, so I think for number 5 for me, I'm gonna go with half and half. I'm gonna do the Nuke and Juggernaut because although I'm sure that they do well, I would need a fucking care package to get that. I had to listen to you guys just to know some of the names of these things because I had never gotten that many kills to get to that. Number 4, I would go with the VTOL. Just based on what you guys explained, it seems like a pretty cool kill streak.
I had UAV personal
3,
radar.
Just wait. Yeah. Number 3, Chopper Gunner. I've gotten that. Don't know how to fucking fly the thing, so it just went until the screen got gray, and then I went back to my person, and I died.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So, Cruise Missile. I have gotten that. I like that because I am the person that if you're playing Search and Destroy, I just go for the one person and kill them. And I'm always on the wrong side of the map where like you could have gotten like 2 or 3 kills with it, but I just go for the one random person sitting back in like their base area. Number 2, I would definitely have to say, care package. We'll go care package. All right. And then number 1, UAV.
Slade has a hard enough time finding the people, let alone killing them.
So. Alrighty, so there we go. There's our top 5 for this week. Call of Duty kill streaks. Had a lot of fun recording this episode. Next week we are back again with the Big Ten preview. There's going to be a lot of heat in there between 2 Penn State fans and somebody that hates most of the Big Ten schools. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Make sure you check that out. You go check out our Group of 5 preview from last week. We look forward to seeing you guys next week, and have a great weekend.